Good evening. Welcome to the monthly regular meeting of the Old Lyme Zoning Commission. I'm Mike Miller, the vice chair, and starting from my right, Mary Gardner Coppola. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
Alternate. Jane Marsh, a regular member and secretary. Mary Jo Nozel, regular member. Denise Savage, a regular member. Mike Fogliano, alternate, and our attorney Matt Willis are here. And item A on the agenda is continued public hearings. There are none. Moving on to B, old business. None. Public hearing, item C, none. This is a very easy meeting so far.
We'll hopefully get through it quickly and efficiently here.
Item D, receipt of new applications. And
We do have one.
We have one.
Okay.
It is 149 Boston Post Road for a pediatric practice. I'm not sure. Do you know where 149D?
Yeah, actually, there's some, we'll get into that in just a minute. It's down towards where Coffee's is. The thing is, our GIS shows it as 151 as opposed to 149. It's because there are two buildings on one lot, and one of them is labeled 149 and one of them is labeled 151, but the actual GIS says 151. Her building, if you look on the front of it, has the label 149, which is why it says that on the application.
The map says 151.
Because again, our GIS is 151, so the tax bill and everything else is that.
Okay.
But to avoid confusion, yes, that it's as long as we all know what we're talking about, we should be okay. So if you want to come up and give your name and brief introduction.
Hi, you want me to just stand in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Catherine Canby. I'm a pediatrician, and I worked in East Lyme for Flanders Pediatrics for the last 12 years. And I have left my practice, and I decided to come out on my own, and I started a business called Canby Pediatrics, and I am requesting a zoning permit for the building of what 149 is the mailing address for the building. It is the building with Pure Salon on Boston Post Road next to All Pro Sports. And it will be on the second floor. I know that you guys don't want all of that information.
You do.
But, oh, you do now? Okay, I didn't know how much you wanted, but it will be on the second floor of that building with a rear entrance. I have a map that they printed out, which I can show you. Because it is a little confusing because other stuff. So this is the Boston Post Road here, and this is the building. This is the bike shop on Boston Post Road, and the entrance will be back here in the back, and there will be 8 parking spots that will be designated for my practice right there. So the salon has an entrance in the front. The back is going to have, it has an elevator entrance that also goes to the salon on the first floor, and then a second entrance that you go up the stairs and get to the top floor of the building, which is raw. And do you have a copy of my application? Mm-hmm. In there is the floor plan that I have outlined with our builder to show you where we're going to be, what we're going to be proposing to do with an outpatient pediatrics office. It's only me. It will be maybe 20 patients, hopefully 20 to 25 patients a day coming in and out. Routine health care for children, regular office visits, sick visits. There will be no emergency care. There will be no, emergency room type procedures. Everything else would be sent out. It's vaccines and regular outpatient
There's
office
your sketch
care.
right there.
There's my sketch. So if you see, it's about 2/3 of the top floor, and it should be with my application. This is the outline that has been drawn up by my builder. We're going to be adding a bathroom, and in my, which I didn't have when I gave my application, turned in the application last week, but I did have Ledge Light come out and look at the septic and make sure that it would be acceptable for, and it was approved, and I have that copy for each of you.
Pass them around, we'll add one to the record
I
here.
made 6, so I think 5 or 6, so hopefully there's enough for everybody.
Thank you.
Eric, the regulation, what is the application coming for us?
Okay, because this space has never been used before, and because services of this sort are covered under this zone by special permit, you need a new special permit for this use.
Okay.
If someone were to go in afterwards for an equivalent type service, you would not need a new special permit. But at this point, as you said, it's raw space, so no one's ever gotten permitted there before, and that's why we have to send her to you for this permit.
Got it, thank you.
That's it. That's it. I think that's it. You have the rest of the application.
Have we gotten a copy yet? Have we gotten a copy yet?
I had.
Of the
I-
application itself?
Yeah, I sent
Yeah,
out 5.
yeah, Craig should have emailed you the whole application, I think. If
I
not,
printed out
If-
5
I'm sure you-
copies.
if not, again, because the public hearing isn't until next month, we'll make sure that you guys have it well in advance of the next month's public hearing. So what we need you guys tonight to do is just
I will make
accept,
a motion that we accept her application and set it down for our
Thank
next
you very
regular
much.
public hearing.
All in favor?
What's the date for that?
hang on, I'm juggling here.
That's for sure, that's.
Come on, Eric.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Mike, question for you. I understand we go to the next regular meeting for that public hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any appetite to accommodate this business sooner through a special meeting, or would that be a little unnecessary? I just don't know if she's facing any specific construction timelines for her business.
Up to,
Oh, that is a very nice thought, and I think as long as it can go to a regular June 9th, we'll be
Yeah.
fine, because I don't plan on starting any building until August at the earliest, but probably September, with a plan to open the beginning of November.
okay, as the applicant indicated,
I just didn't know if there was any sort of time.
Thank you, though, I appreciate that.
as the
Kids will get
applicant,
sick at the beginning of the new school year, so.
Well, yeah, for legal reasons, I can't open until November 1st because of a non-compete from my previous employer. So until the law changes and there are no non-competes, I will be abiding by the law, and November 1st is the plan, which means that construction can start in August to September, hopefully after. Some will start in August, but the majority of it would be after the kids go back to school.
and June 9th, as she indicated, is the date of the public hearing.
We've had a motion that was seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in a month.
Yeah. I think I've had all my shots.
We can make that part of the.
Then we get a condition of approval that Jane gets her shots.
Okay.
I already-
Next on the agenda is the executive session. We need a motion to go into the executive session then.
I will make a motion that we go into executive session and that we invite Attorney Willis to be a participant and we invite Eric Knapp to be a participant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, I'm going to stop the tape. Okay, we're back going again, and you should be good to go at this point. Next issue is the ZEO update on the rewrite of the regulations. Again, I did email you this morning with the most recent reply
Can I just
from,
open the door so we're back now? I don't want to be accused of hiding things from the public.
okay. As I started to say, we have been working with Francisco Gomes of FHI on the reg rewrite. At the request of some of the individual members, I have sent sort of all of the interim pieces there, some of the back history. You got this morning sort of the most recent version of the draft regs. I wrote on my copy the pieces that are not in this so far, but you should be getting within the next meeting before your next month meeting here so we can discuss it. My goal is also to have Mr. Gomes available either in person or on video link to go over the regs with you and answer questions, since he's the one that's been drafting it sort of line by line. At this point, you've got essentially the first half of the regs here. And what we're missing is definitions, the excavation section, the erosion control section, parking, signs, zoning board of appeals, and administration and enforcement. So that's mostly, again, the second half of this book here. It is being worked on, and again, per this email this morning that I forwarded you from Mr. Gomes, you should be getting it in time for your June meeting.
You didn't mention general regulations, section 4 in there. Are those being dispersed into the other sections?
Many of them are in the regs you got this morning. So you have, if you look in what is now section, let's see, yep, what is now section 13, overlay zones, you'll see you've got, and they're listed where they came from, identification of zones, definitions, for the flood insurance ones in here, you've got, then, let's see, that's flood hazard permits, conservation zones. So a lot of these have been migrated over, more of them will be coming in, but you do have some of them in what is now section 13. And again, more of them will be coming into that. So yeah, I don't think all of them have migrated over yet, but at least that's where they will end up being, the ones that are not already there. Yeah. If you look in 13.
13 in the document you sent this morning is floating zone.
Okay, it's floodplain zone in the copy I printed off from my. Okay. But again, more will be migrating there. Because again, we got in here Connecticut River setbacks. 13.2 is conservation zone, which is your gateway regs. So your gateway regs have migrated over, your floodplain zone is migrated over, but not the rest of the zones that would belong there. So
I'll leave that as a specific question for the consultant. What was the disposition of the general regs in section 4? I spot checked it.
Okay.
I haven't seen where they've been transplanted and modified.
I will go back and I'll start writing. I have a video conference with Mr. Gomes tomorrow to sort of go over anything that got raised tonight. So,
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to me too, because I did most of my initial review, not really understanding what you wanted us to do.
Yeah.
no, that's fine. And again, this was just sort of a first attempt to get it out, so at least you were seeing, because I've been paying bills for months and months on this thing. I want you to at least see where the money's going. And,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I appreciate that, but I mean, I asked in January, kind of, what do you want us to do when we start getting this? So to your point, Mike, I noticed that like some of section, general regulation, section 4 is in section 3, and it's very messy. It's messy, and I got kind of frustrated going over the last version, so I thought, okay, is there a document that he could produce that shows what it was, just something easy, what it was and where it is now.
Okay?
That might really help us at least look.
Have a roadmap, yeah.
Yeah.
I had made a similar point. What do I need to be zeroing in on? Because trying to bounce between all of these different
Okay,
comments was it's just difficult, especially
No, I
if you
understand.
haven't seen a document like this before.
I understand that, and I guess that's part of why we're doing this sort of first time tonight with even a part of the regs here. I will tell him tomorrow that what we're looking for is sort of a translation piece that shows where things started, where things went, so you guys can work from that going forward.
Okay.
It's a challenge to reverse engineer.
It really is. And are you looking for us to look at typos or? I mean,
No,
I'm trying to.
I'm not worried about the
How granular
typos.
are we supposed to be?
I guess what I really am looking for is, like, when I went through, I found, like, the alcohol section is dramatically shorter and is missing things that I thought should be in there. So, again, once you have the Rosetta Stone, basically, that shows you where things went to, I'm sort of hoping you'll go through and say, look, this section doesn't have as much or has different or has whatever, and I think we're missing something that should be in there, or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, we're missing something, or I want more in there, you know, for whatever reason that didn't make it, or you translated this wrong, because I've had to do that on certain times where I sort of went through and I said, I think you missed the point of what this was trying to do, and here's how to rewrite it so that it does what I think it's trying to do. And again, I've done some of this with him line by line, but again, more eyes and more familiarity with the regs is certainly helpful on this. So, again, I understand the confusion at the moment that it's hard to necessarily translate back and forth. I will make sure we get that translation device in essence. But then my hope is that theoretically, this is just essentially a straight updating of the regs to a new format that's easier to read. If it is not a good translation, if it's not doing that, then we need to go back to him and say, you've misinterpreted what the regs are supposed to be doing here, and here's what the regs need to say. Michael, you were talking?
Yeah, I have a question. So the regs that we've gotten now, my understanding was it's like a rewriting and so like for instance, the prohibited uses, like in these sections, are those new prohibited uses?
No,
or
those are-
prohibited uses that are current?
Theoretically, those are exactly the same prohibited uses you have now. And if for some reason they're not, then we need to go back and say, you need to change that.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
be sort of disappointed if that's gonna happen too often.
Well, that,
Right.
again,
It's hard to know what's missing.
Right.
well, I have been going through and trying to do some of that as well, and I will keep going through and doing that as well. And again, I will get a better translation from him as to where things went too. But again, this morning, going through it, particularly the alcohol section got flagged for me as this is not right. So some places where you are going to see changes are places where your regs just have things in them that are no longer legal. For better or worse, the state statutes now prohibit the town from having a minimum house size. Your regs say the minimum house size for 1 story is 800 square feet, and for 2 stories is 1,200 square feet. The state statute has now changed to say that is no longer allowed. So that's not going to be in your new set of regulations, because state statute just says can't do that anymore. So if there are situations where that has changed, I will also try and get from Mr. Gomes a list of things that are deleted so you understand what is no longer there and why it is no longer there. Okay?
Yeah, I pointed specifically at PA 2129 for that one, so I sent that in my notes to you, Craig, that had several modifications to general statutes 82.
Yeah, and again, some of this you did opt out of, like for instance, the accessory apartment stuff that you opted out of. You opted out of the cannabis stuff. I mean, there are things that are in there that you opted not to incorporate and were allowed by statute not to incorporate. But again, the statute specifically did now say you're not allowed to limit the minimum house size. So that's just not going to be in the new regs.
The other thing that's out there that I noticed right away, right in the purpose, is that unspecified use of the term character as a basis for zoning decisions is now prescribed, and it has to be something objective and measurable,
Yeah.
descriptive in order to have weight.
Yeah, and we did talk about that, and there are some changes to that effect in this set of regulations, but I think more of that is gonna get moved into the second phase when we come to that. So yes, he and I specifically talked about how to make this version address that issue. Didn't want to try and add too much language in because we didn't know what the sense of the commission was. Maybe that is a good place for you to talk to him and say, here's what we think that should say that it doesn't say now. But he and I, sort of talking on video chat, didn't feel like we knew the right language to put in there, so we just left it as is for now.
There's a gray space between that and something that's obviously new,
Yeah.
very different than
I agree.
bringing it to compliance.
So,
So back to the question, so if we see a typo, say the word said, I don't know, border in the original documents, and the new one it said borders, as an example.
Yeah,
Do you care about that?
I mean, yes, I do, but I mean, I get, if you find things, flag them. But I don't, I would much rather you work on the sort of substance than on the typo stuff here.
Yeah.
If you find typos, terrific, I'm always glad to hear about it. But your job, I don't necessarily want you to be my proofreader or his proofreader.
At that point, it could change so much before we get there. I would wait till.
Yeah, and again, theoretically, that's what we're paying him
Why
for.
would they change it all? Why would we change border to border? I mean, I've
No,
seen examples of that.
Okay, but I mean, again,
Why?
if you have things like that where you think that we've translated it poorly, then again, when we have Mr. Gomes rather, here next month, you can ask him about that.
Okay.
Because that sounds like more of a substantive thing, and I don't know quite what that change.
And see, that's the thing, I don't know, like, 1.5 C, now this would have been the March revision. The bottom it says, any property use, building structure, ladder, site development, et cetera, et cetera. Property is a word that's been added. Before it just said any use.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's tying into the fact that you're a zoning body, and that, so I think that he put in the word property, and you can ask him about it, to tie it to the fact that it's tied to the real estate, which is what what this commission is dealing with. So, again, I'm not going to try and put words in his mouth. My suspicion is the word property is in there because, again, you regulate property. And feel free to, if there are things like that that are important to you, to raise them next month with him.
Did we give ourselves a deadline for when we're to conclude? And
There's no firm deadline on this. I mean, the contract says that this portion is supposed to take about a year.
because it makes sense to me anyway. I mean, we're getting these drafts and trying to review this with what we have and see the changes and understand it. It would seem a lot easier if we would just break it down section by section. Like section 2, 3, and 4 in the current, this is what it's going to look like in the new. And then it would be a lot easier to digest and understand it.
And have deliberation.
Yeah.
Well, and again, so far we don't have an quote-unquote application for the new set of regs.
Right.
What you're looking at here is more or less the first half of the regs, but I will get you I'll get you some sort of translation as to where they've all gone to. And again, if you want to talk with Mr. Gomes about the easiest way to review it so that it makes sense to you, that's fine. At some point, it may be necessary to have just sort of special meetings to sort of go through this. We can just take this. If we start getting applications again, fortunately this month we don't have applications, but if you start getting into applications that require a lot of your time, then there's no point in getting to this while you're trying to get to that. But for now, again, let me work with him on getting this to you in a way that is more useful for you to review. Because I'm hearing loud and clear that this is not a great way for you guys to start looking at this.
And then the other thing is when there's something new, for us to understand why it's in there. I mean, I just opened this up The adult entertainment goes on for like 3 pages with all kinds of terms. It's like, what the hell? It's like, why do we need this much definition on adult entertainment?
I think,
So was there a case that came out that said we have to have these definitions in? Like, it'd be
no.
nice to know what the rationale is for if we're putting something new in.
okay. I will go back and,
They color coded a different color, so then that we can see where's new and where's old.
I noticed that too, Mike. I wonder if there was some, like,
And
First Amendment case or
the
something.
new definition is like describing sex acts. It's like, we need that in a zoning regulation?
no, clearly you don't. And I just, but I'm trying to think.
But I you get caught up in some of that, and you're like, so wait, what else am I missing here?
Okay.
Is there ability to color code it? So like, you have your
Sure.
regular text in black and then it's added in a different color, so that way maybe
Absolutely.
it's easier for us.
But those for us who want the printed version wouldn't be benefited by that.
Well, that's true, though we can potentially print it in color for you as well.
Oh, dear.
Okay? That's more expensive, but if we need to do that, we will.
If you could just do underline or bracketing like they do with the general statute, that is how you do it, to keep it in black and white.
Yeah, I mean, the only challenge is because they're moving to entirely different section numbers, it's a little harder to do. But I will talk with him tomorrow about how to get this in a more user-friendly version to be able to review. So again, I'm hearing quite loudly that you guys are struggling to review it effectively, and that's part of why I did this tonight with even a partial set of regs, so that we can start figuring out the best way to have you attack the revisions here. And again, to your point, Michael, there's no firm deadline on this. My goal, ideally, is to have this done by the November elections, so that I don't need to try and bring someone new potentially in to try and work on this after the November elections, and then we would start with the
You
phase
have
two.
at least somebody there.
You
You have at least one person there.
Well, but again, the point is,
You had to have phase 1 done by the November election.
yeah, we're never going to have phase two done by the November elections.
No, I just
But
wanted,
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah,
hearing
the
you
goal
correctly.
is to have phase one completed by the November elections, so that, again, I don't need to bring new members in and catch them up to speed on what you guys are gonna be working on between now and the end of the year. Whether I succeed in that or not, my hope is to get the phase one done by November, just so that, again, we're working with the same body of people all the way through.
And is it true then that this latest we got today, the changes are based off the November, they're not based off the March changes you made? Because I noticed that some of the paragraphs have changed from when they were in March, now they've got a different number, and then May one. So do I compare to, go back to our,
It's also a lot bigger, like one.
Yes.
so,
Yeah, I mean, at some point, we're gonna need to, I will add, but at some
Okay.
point, I think the formatting is new, and we're gonna need to just say that we're gonna need
compare
to,
it to the original.
and that's, and again, I'm hearing that we need a translation device from all of that as well. So
Okay, because this is something from, all right, this is the May 9th version.
Yeah.
The chart's wrong. The chart's off. And I think it's just because Francisco added sound view and maybe got his numbers, but here.
Okay.
It's really off.
Let me,
It's the LI80 column is wrong,
okay, and
for
that's,
the most part.
that, very important information. I will bring this to his attention tomorrow, and, I mean, the thing that we did do, and we spent a fair amount of time doing it, is, I went through the use tables and figured out what permit was needed for each use. So that is new since last you've seen it, and he and I spent a great deal of time going through sort of line by line on the use tables.
That had to have taken time.
So, but it would help if you guys did, in fact, at some point, sort of look through that and make sure that the uses are matching with the right permit. Okay,
Okay, and I think that's really important, and I did spend some time with the last version on that. But some of the words have changed. You may have called it, like for cultivating propagation plants, you may have called it something different in this version.
Okay.
like nursery. I think that's the same thing. Do we care if that the words are different? I
Well, in cases where the words have changed, I think it's because the definition then incorporates in whatever the new words are. But I will double check with him on that tomorrow as well.
Okay. So can I just confirm, I heard say that we might have some special meetings to kind of.
If necessary, yeah, we're
Let me finish, yeah. And so, but all of phase one is just contained within our group. At no point are we bringing in other board members, other commissions, anything. It's just our group that's going to be discussing this for the entire phase one?
Again, theoretically, because we're just reworking the existing regs, I mean, at some point, the planning commission is going to need to weigh in whether it's consistent with planning, conservation, and development.
Yeah.
But before we get there, I want to have something relatively coherent to show them. And if you think it's important to bring in other parties, we certainly can do that. Much more for phase two, the theory was we were going to be getting lots more outside parties in for the phase two piece of this, because that's really where we're going to have sort of philosophical discussions about what's in the regs and what should be or what shouldn't be in the regs. So because this is just reorienting the existing structure, the theory was we didn't need to get a lot of outside input from various citizens groups or whatever else.
Well, not citizen groups. I'm just thinking, I mean, yes, also citizen groups are important. I'm thinking just some of our fellow board and commission members, with the idea being particularly those that are going to be most critical to phase two. There could be value, I'm just putting it up for the group's consideration, there could be value in bringing them into some of these initial discussions so that they are getting up to speed on what's going on, so that once we get to these more deliberative and philosophical, as you described, Eric, discussions, they're hitting the ground running. They're not trying to play catch up. From an efficiency and effectiveness, and I'm also trying to be cognizant of lessons learned from recent very complicated zoning applications that we've gone through, that while we don't need to open everything up to everybody all the time, I think there are other parts of the town governing boards that have different pieces of the puzzle that could be very valuable for us to maybe understand what is a potential speed bump that we're going to hit, and maybe it won't be until halfway through phase two, but they're already tracking it, because it's not a secret that we're doing this 2-year project.
No, absolutely. And I have been telling people all the way along that we are going to be asking for your input. Be ready to give your input when we start asking for it. So if you think asking for it earlier in the process is important, I'm happy to get them involved. Well, again, up until now, my theory has been...
I want to hear from my colleagues. I'm just asking.
I wouldn't do it until the structure is all there,
Okay.
because otherwise, as chaotic as our review might be.
We're confused right now.
Yeah, so.
And I appreciate that. And again, I apologize to the extent that...
It would be actually cruel to ask them to review it and then have it all be sort of, because they'll say the same things that we are. So to me, it would be better to have it at least modestly packaged in its the structure of the.
Let me, I have a video conference with Mr. Gomes tomorrow. I will go through all of this with him, and I will try and put feelers out to certain boards and commissions to see who might be interested in being involved, and see when we can sort of get them.
I think the point being is if we're changing just the order of things, and there's no really interpretation, but I do think we should be cognizant of things that maybe have implications. So, for example, we're saying we're cleaning this up, but if cleaning it up is talking about definitions, definitions get into things that are more than just, changing some language or putting it in a different section or making it to state code or to state legislation. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where I would be very interested from our consultant, our contractor, looking at okay, he's making the recommendation that we change these definitions or that we change this. And I think that's when is it substantive and when is it not? When is
Yeah,
it cleaning
when is
up?
it performance?
I would love to get everything cleaned up, as Jane said, because it's confusing right now. But I also hear what Mary's saying, because she's right. If there's something that's substantive, even in this first section in terms of definitions, that's when, particularly our other land use boards, planning,
Well, say when we
affordable
had,
housing,
economic development.
those type, we
if we
should
had this
have
whole
that
thing,
discussion.
whole thing with the underlining of anything new,
Yeah.
but it's the whole thing, then I think we could
Okay,
ask
well,
for commentary.
I think hopefully by June, if not shortly thereafter, you should have that collection of documents.
But with
available.
with the new stuff.
I will talk to him tomorrow about getting that incorporated,
Yeah.
but he's promised me a full set of revised regs by your June meeting.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that much additional effort to be able to then underline what's new or all the sorts of things you guys are talking about tonight. So I will talk to him about getting that part ready for the June meeting.
Yeah.
And again, if it's not ready until the 3rd or 4th week of June, it may involve a special meeting, it may not. I will keep you abreast of my discussions with you. But again, I have heard loud and clear that what we have right now is really hard to work with and understand and interpret. So we need to get it in a more user-friendly format for the commission to work from.
Yeah, I mean, you should tell him, when I went through this last month, when I looked at sections that he had done and retitled and brought in stuff from other sections that made sense, and that makes sense. I mean, that is a good thing. So please tell him we get that. What we're trying to do is effectively help.
No,
And that's the issue. Yeah.
I think that will be taken in the right way by him. And again, I think all of your comments tonight are well received, and I will go back to him and say, as a formatting matter, they think it looks good, but they want to be able to understand what you've done and where you've done it so that they can effectively review it. And that's the message I'm going to bring back to him, and hopefully in response to that, I'll have something a little, again, more user-friendly for you guys to work from.
And I think that the important part is for us to be able to do that, then we know, is it substantive or not? Because if it's just like renumbering, well, no. But if he's now reworded or whatever, it's like we need to look at that rewording to make sure it didn't substantially change.
Yeah, and again, to your point, there have been places like he was trying to take a lot of the gateway stuff and move it into the general definitions. But there were conflicts between how gateway defined something like height and how the rest of the regulations define height. So you ended up with conflicting definitions because gateway said height was one thing and you guys said height was something else for the rest of the town. And how do you have one definition
And
that?
that's something
can't.
that's something you should
There was
like
always
leave
a
and bring
separate
to us.
definition for height
Well, that's-
and gateway.
So,
Exactly.
and again, FEMA has its own set of regs for certain things. So, trying to have only one definition section was becoming problematic because you had a FEMA way of looking at things, a gateway way of looking at things, and a general regulation way of looking at things. So some of the duplicative nature that he was trying to condense didn't really work when you were condensing. And I worked with him on trying to catch a lot of that, but obviously there's probably more that I haven't spotted, and we're going to try and come back to you with, again, something that allows us all to be able to go through and work with all of that. So, I appreciate all of your comments on this, and again, I will go back to him and work with him further to get something that is, again, more, as I've been saying, user-friendly on that. So, okay. That brings us to user fees. What Craig has done, and I hopefully have enough to pass around, if not, you may need to share a little bit. Okay.
Hey, these are in color.
This is in color, yes. We do have a color printer. It is more expensive, obviously, but for one page, it's okay. So for our special permit applications, we're looking to add the color language there to make sure we can properly incorporate or collect, rather, our fees, because right now we're not covering our costs on certain things. So if we have a renotice, or if we have to have certain extra reviews, those will be paid for by the applicant. And you have the right in your regulations and by town ordinance to set your own fees. So you guys are able to, if you want to incorporate this, do so by vote of the commission. And I don't know if you want to take it for a month and come back in June and vote
So
on it.
when do we make this finding then?
Well, if we do this the way Old Saybrook does it, by way of example, when we first get an application in, we immediately ship it off to Jacobson's office, and then essentially Jacobson would come back with a fee estimate, which gets passed on to the applicant, and they can't start their public hearing until they've paid all the appropriate fees.
So we don't make a finding because it says if the commission finds that the nature and intensity of some,
Well, but when you receive an application, before you get to public hearing, you then tell me, yes, we.
so say for example, the pediatric thing.
Yes, if you
We
wanted
would do
this.
that tonight?
Huh?
We would have done that tonight? We would have make a finding?
Well, or if at any point during the application you want to send it out. I mean, you can do this at any time. But obviously, earlier is better from the standpoint of having it flow naturally into the process. I mean, there are some that are going to be obvious, like should 308-1 Mile Creek ever come here with the quarry? I think there's not going to be any of you who are saying, don't bother sending that. I think that everyone here is going to say, we need an engineer review of this. We probably need more than an engineer review of this. So there are some that are going to be pretty clear. If there are ones that are unclear and you find out halfway through the application, oh no, we need to send it out, you're always able to then vote to send it out. And per your own requirements, at that point, the applicant will be on the hook for doing so.
Is there any reason we wouldn't want to have more subjective language, like a measurable, like if it exceeds this?
Objective, do you mean?
Thank you, not subjective. Thank you. It's a little subjective right now, and so who's saying it's too much or not? And are there examples, for instance, whether it's in Old Saybrook or something, where it's there's thresholds that are met, and once they're triggered, and then it's just a lot easier for the applicants to know what to expect and plan accordingly, and for the commission to inform how we can make a decision.
I mean, I've never seen it with thresholds, if only because, particularly on a monetary basis, we don't know what those numbers look like until we send it out for referral review. So it's hard to know how much it's going to cost to review until we send it out, at which point we've already told the applicant you're going to be on the hook for whatever that number is going to look like.
In terms of the exact dollar amounts, that's not what we're concerned about. I think
No.
more the concern is, when do we send it to the engineer and when don't we send it to an engineer? And do we have a minimum threshold where we could, at any point, they didn't give us everything on the information, they didn't give us everything.
Yeah.
When they submitted, it said like, oh, they're going to grade the site, they're going to put in drainage or whatever. It's like, you didn't say any of that in your application.
Yeah.
So that may come up, but when, the typical thing, pediatric office, they're not doing any outside work. We're not going to send it to the engineer, right?
Yeah,
We may send it to an electrician, but we're not.
I mean, I guess the answer is you're going back to sort of sections 13A and 13B of your regs. They're a little bit squishy on what exactly would trigger a review. It's pretty much at the commission's discretion or when the commission finds it necessary or whatever else. So, I mean, we can try and come up with tighter triggers for that. But I don't know that our regs right now give us a lot to work with on that.
And maybe as you look at the triggers, some acknowledgement that there needs to be a threshold at which point the application is incomplete, and we're not gonna commission engineers and technical specialists to complete the application for them.
Yeah.
Well,
Stop.
a determination.
To refine it or to help us, but I don't think we want to get in a position where it's our responsibility to, as I said, complete the application for them.
No, and again,
Even if we charge it back.
but there's actually a court case on this in the last several years. A determination of incompleteness is something that has been taken away from me as staff, and the commission itself now has to make a finding of incompleteness. So, because what used to be happening was, in many towns, the person in my position would review an application and say, this is incomplete, it's not going to my commission until it's complete. And the courts have now said that, I'm sorry, staff, that's a commission responsibility, not a staff responsibility. So,
Oh, goodness.
I'm sorry. I can make a recommendation, I can make a staff memo, I can do whatever, but the actual statement that this application is incomplete has to be done by the commission itself. So, again, I understand the need for a threshold. And I will talk to Attorney Willis about what a threshold would look like. And again, we don't need to adopt this tonight. I can come back next month with an updated version of this. But it's hard to have a hard and fast threshold.
I don't really think it's possible, even though you'd like it. I'm not sure that it's possible.
Let me, and again, what I will also do is I will just go back and look in a bunch of other towns' regs and see what other towns have. And between talking to Matt about it and seeing what other towns have, I'll see if there's more specific language I can incorporate into this.
What would
I
happen?
agree with you, Jane. That I don't think it would be a fixed threshold, but even acknowledging that on a case-by-case basis, there would be a point at which we would declare it incomplete instead of trying to engage technical experts or
Yeah,
engineers or
the
whatever.
applications are so different one to the other.
Yeah, and there's also,
I have a
again,
concern.
go ahead, Michael.
Sorry. Hey, Eric, I just got a question, or I guess kind of some general concern. At what point is it a concern that it's like one engineer's word versus another engineer's word? So if we're requiring them to go for an additional review with Jacobson, for instance, but their engineer says the application is complete, and Jacobson says, no, it's not complete, but they're paying for now Jacobson to review their applications for completeness. Is there ever a point where that might be a conflict of interest?
I don't know if it's a conflict of interest. I mean, ultimately, you guys are the finders of fact. And ultimately, I mean, Jacobson may review and give you a list of 30 things that are wrong, and you may say, I'm sorry, we disagree, we accept the applicant's take on this, it's not a problem. So you are the finders of fact. Jacobson will give you a report. You can choose not to believe Jacobson's report. You can choose not to send it to Jacobson. But I don't think you're in a position to say, we don't even want to send it to Jacobson because we believe the applicant. Or maybe if you like to do that, you can. But ultimately, Jacobson doesn't dictate what you're going to do. They're just one expert among many. They're your paid expert. But you don't have to believe Jacobson versus anybody else. The question of credibility is ultimately for a commission to decide.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just thinking about as an applicant, the costs involved with additional reviews get very expensive. Especially engineers are very expensive. So
no doubt.
I have to imagine there has to be some sort of max or cap or something in line here, because what's to stop Jacobson from charging an exorbitant amount of money to an applicant?
It says reasonable in this document.
Well, I mean, and here's the thing, Michael. My concern the other way is I have seen applications, it's down in other towns, where it has taken 3 or 4 or 5 reviews by Jacobson or whoever the consulting engineer is, because they keep coming back with a new version, and the new version is still not right, and then it comes back with a new version and it's still not right. And so I want the incentive to be to get it right the first time, so we don't have to keep sending it back to the engineer, because every time we send it back to the engineer, we're absorbing the cost of review. So if the applicant is on the hook for serial reviews, it might cause them to get it right the first time, or at least the second time.
So for example, I'm sorry, Mike, so for example, when we had the pickleball issue, we needed an expert to,
$5,000, yeah.
right, so
That they would be on the hook for.
the applicant would be on the hook
The
for
applicant
that.
would be on the hook for that $5,000.
And so I see many times where we accept an applicant during the public hearing, issues come up, and then at that point, we might need more information from an expert, and then the applicant would be on the hook for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, part of the incentive, as I just described, is to, it causes the applicant to be better at giving us more complete information, because if we don't have complete information, we're gonna be sending it to our experts to be getting complete information, and they're gonna pay for it. So, that's,
And there's another aspect, which is, we're not engineers.
Right.
no,
So
you're not
when
engineers, you're not.
applications come in that have engineering in them, unless we just want to roll over and accept what the applicant says, we don't have what I think the charge is to have an independent review of these,
And
of the engineering part of it.
And to that, we've had in the last 6 months 2 separate 228019 interventions, one in front of wetlands, one in front of zoning. In neither case did the applicant present any real evidence. But had they presented real evidence of environmental damage, at that point it might have been incumbent on the commission to then hire somebody to review their claims of environmental damage to say, are these real or are these not real? Again, in this particular case, you didn't really have anything that.
But I think that our experts often are to supplement our own, the fact that we're lay people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what our community expects of us, to be more than just lay people
Yes.
when we're reviewing stuff that has a lot of
And
engineering.
again, should you be seeing in the next year or so a redevelopment, for instance, of 19 Halls Road, the Andes site there, which is potentially on the horizon? Yeah, I think having somebody there to review your engineering, someone there to review this tidal wetlands, all the other things that are going to come together with that will be important, and the community is going to expect that of you, because it's obviously a very high-profile location. So, okay?
So at this point, we don't charge anything.
At this point, we do not collect we collect an original application fee, but again, in the event of republishing, in the event of all of that, we are not collecting those fees. So, again, we don't need to vote on this tonight, but I will try and come back by next month with better or additional language if I can, to try and reflect the comments tonight about trying to have a threshold or be more specific about how we're going to try and implement that. If I can't, then I'll let you know what I've done and not been able to do it. If you guys have suggestions for language, by all means.
Yeah, I think the problem I have is where it says it may have a significant impact.
Mhm.
We may not think something has a significant impact if the engineering is gonna work. You know, the engineering may take care of that significant impact. We just wanna make sure the engineering is not creating a problem. So I think just getting that language so that where we think that, and you know,
Again,
to make our decision, we need technical assistance.
Denise, if you want to help wordsmith with it.
I'll take a look at it and
Okay.
see it, but Jane was making that point also. I think that's the language, because
Okay.
I don't want to have to make a determination of significant impact. I want to make a determination that I need more information to determine if there's a significant impact or not.
I take no great pride and ownership of this thing. If you guys want to hack it apart and we'll be working to make it better, all for it. Okay? I'm not going to sit here and say, this is perfect language, you must take, whatever it is, let's get it right.
Let's take a look.
Okay? I would rather take another month and get it right than try and do something imperfect tonight.
And I just want to add one thing on that, based on something Michael said. I think, the flip side of it is I also want to make sure we have something that's transparent for the applicant, right? And so that the expectations are clear and we're not needlessly or unexpectedly burdening the business or the applicant. So it's, kind of a straightforward and readily identified as reasonable request on our part in advance. So just wanted to back up Michael on that.
I mean, I agree with that too. There could be a range in some cases. At least we're notifying the applicant of potential fees.
Yeah.
Well, how about
Applicant. Sorry.
how about if the two of you, would you, since we charge $0 for these things now, are
Fair
you
enough.
looking, what if we said it wouldn't exceed a certain amount? I mean, is that what you're
Well,
looking for?
No, I think that's,
That would be a better thing, because there's a lot of demand on applicants between engineers, architects, lawyers. Like, as an applicant myself, several times in several different jurisdictions, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to do some of these applications, and sometimes it's very difficult for small businesses who are just struggling to get open to be able to afford some of these things. So,
But Michael, who is gonna pay for the engineering then? That's what I wanna know.
I'm not opposed to an engineering review. I guess my concern is that it's so open-ended. If we have to almost get like a threshold now. I don't know. I'm not really sure how we get there. I just don't want to have Jacobson to have this ability to have an open-ended reviewed checkbook at the applicant's expense.
Well, again, that's theoretically why you ask for a fee estimate from Jacobson's office. And what I've seen, again, and this is in Old Saybrook, where I practiced for a number of years as their commission's attorney, I have seen where Jacobson said, I think it's going to cost $30,000, for instance, and the applicant came back and said, I don't think you need to do everything in Jacobson's letter. And then we went through and we said, okay, of the 10 things in Jacobson's letter, let's take out 3 or 4 or whatever it is, and only have Jacobson do the remaining 6. And that cuts down the price. So Jacobson will detail everything that they think that we need to do and give a cost associated with it. And then the commission can pick and choose amongst those items what would be required and what wouldn't be required.
Well, that's a slippery slope, because if we knew that, then we wouldn't be hiring Jacobson.
Well, I understand, but I mean, but that's.
Yeah, I think let's look at this.
Okay, again, we don't need to answer this tonight, but we'll start the process.
Do you get much pushback from applicants in the past?
Oh, yeah.
And they
Clearly.
weren't paying for it.
Now,
Yeah, how about that?
Eric,
Yeah.
if I may, has it always just been one designated, for instance, since Jacobson's our quote-unquote town engineer, do other municipalities offer more than one engineering option? Like, it's almost like, I feel like we have to provide more than one option.
Not usually.
Not usually, and many towns have a town engineer on staff, right? And so the town engineer is responsible for doing a lot of this and farms out some of it. So Jacobson's our consulting engineer. If Jacobson has a conflict for some reason, then we go out to get somebody else, and that has happened. Like, for instance, there's work being done in the cemetery, and the cemetery has hired Jacobson to do their engineering work. Well, they were in front of wetlands recently, and the person making the presentation in front of wetlands was from Jacobson's office. So if there was an engineer review required, some other firm would have to do it. But I don't know that we necessarily, because we have an actual contract for services with Jacobson, to be able to go and get separate contracts with 5 or 6 different engineering firms, I think is potentially problematic.
I wasn't saying that now. I just thought it might be nice to have more than one, but I understand the concern.
And we have used others in the past, and again, I know the Planning Commission has gone elsewhere in the past, but at the moment, again, our consulting engineer is Jacobson, and that's who we use for pretty much all of our town work.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, as for an applicant's point perspective, and I'm just being out of it, is that Jacobson is like the Cadillac type of engineer in this area, right? So you can always expect their engineering costs to be far superior to a lot of other engineering companies, in my experience. But I just, that sounds good. I talked about it enough. I just want to articulate those concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so anything else on this before we sort of set it aside for the evening, or,
Dorm track is a really good idea to have fees. Good concept.
well, again,
Yeah, it is a good concept. Thank you for pointing that out.
no, I'm happy to work on this until we feel we have it right. So don't feel like I'm taking this personally. I'm happy to hear the comments. I'm taking them for what they're worth, and we're going to get it right so you guys are okay with it, okay? So the fact that you guys aren't ready with it is okay by me. I accept that, and we'll keep working on it, okay? Okay, discussion of the C30S. This was something that Paul wanted on the agenda. Paul is obviously not here this evening. Particularly what Paul was concerned about was he was wondering whether we need a moratorium for gas stations in the C30S zone. He is worried, rightly or wrongly, that we're going to get the application for a gas station or truck stop or something in the C30S zone. and is wondering whether we either need to delete it entirely from the C30S zone, or whether we want a moratorium to consider what to do about it in the C30S zone.
I could fill you in on that. I texted Paul a few weeks ago asking about the process for the moratorium, how that started with the storage units. And I suggested, should we discuss as a commission whether or not we need a moratorium for, my concern was fueling stations in the C30 zone while we are rewriting our regulations. And my concern was that 100 Halls Road seemed the right property for like a Cumberland Farms to go in with a store and a gas station. And so the concern is, while we're trying to have our own vision as a commission on what that C30 zone should look like on Halls Road, do we want a moratorium so that while we're doing that work, a gas station sneaks in?
Okay, and
I would just see a removal. Let's just strike it. Let's just get it out of there. Screw the moratorium. Let's just eliminate gas stations. We got enough of them.
well, that's
That's a,
that's another way of
avenue
looking
too.
at it.
That's an opinion.
Okay, so the only challenge on a moratorium is for a moratorium to really be legally effective, whatever the right word is here, it has to be for a fairly limited duration, and then you have to be working on whatever it is. And you are working on changing your regs, but the phase 2 piece of this is probably another, if we're not starting until the end of this year, another year plus after that. So I'm not sure we can have a reg moratorium for the 18 months or whatever it will take you to get there. That's probably a little long on a moratorium. But again, it may be that the right answer is then,
Or we could have a zoning change and take that out of the.
you can take it out of the current regs.
So on the,
And then,
on the special permit uses for our current C30, as motor vehicle service facility, repairs, garage, I assume that's would cover a gas station?
no, there's a separate provision in there. Let me go pull that section here. I'm sorry. I don't have it already.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that was the correct one.
Okay, I go through this every time I have to look. It is in here. I know it is in here.
Right.
So give me a second.
And you know the page to spell.
Okay, here. Retail dealers station for sale of motor vehicle fuels.
Where is it?
It's just above motor vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Retail dealer station for sale of motor vehicle fuels. That's the section. That's the line that would need to come out of C30.
Okay.
Okay? And if you want to submit a commission application to that effect, I can certainly put that together. You would receive it next month. It would go for public hearing the month after. That was where you wanted to go.
I know Paul and I were both interested in that.
And that's gonna have to go to planning.
It would have to go to planning as well, for consistency with the POCD. And it would also go to Gateway for their thoughts. It would go to state DEP for their thoughts. I mean, there are a standard number of different bodies that have to review this. RiverCog has to review it. So again, there's a standard procedure for amending your regs. And we'd go through that standard procedure. And again, nothing to say you couldn't add it back in at some later
We can always
point.
add it back in, right?
So it
Okay,
makes
let's
sense
do it.
to do the moratorium,
No.
that timeline? So-
No, what he's suggesting is just take that language out of the reg entirely.
Right, but what I was
Yeah.
saying is adopt the moratorium to cover that shorter time span while.
We're not talking about a moratorium now, just take it
You
out.
if we just delete it from the regs, and then we can add it back in when we get to the next.
Okay. So I was saying is both.
Look,
So go for a moratorium to cover the time span while the removal of the reg is traversing the
no, but
various.
I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry I didn't quite get it before. However, the time span to implement a moratorium is identical to the time span to delete.
Yes, okay.
Because they both require public hearings, they both have to get sent out, because a moratorium is, like any other reg change, subject to all those requirements. So if we're gonna delete, we can do that in about 65 days, and we're not gonna get a moratorium in place faster than that. Okay, I understand what you're asking now.
And I understand the answer.
Okay. So I will be back next month with an application for a deletion of that line from the regulation. Okay?
I think that's a great idea.
And I think that covers item F.
Okay. I know there have been people sort of waiting in the audience. I don't know if you want to ask. It's not a public hearing, it's a public meeting, so they don't have to speak, but I don't know if you want to get their thoughts here or
Any
not.
comments, Sloan?
No comment?
Do you have any comments?
No,
Okay.
I'm just listening.
You know, you've been sitting here all night. I didn't want to like.
That's okay.
Okay.
This is the part I wanted to hear about.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
That brings us to minutes. Is anybody has thoughts about the minutes here?
I do,
Okay.
on the April 14th.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes, I
question.
missed it.
Yeah, yes.
Actually, I'm sorry, I have a, on what we just did, I just thought of something.
Go ahead.
If we just take that out of our regs, are we making the existing fueling stations non-conforming?
Absolutely.
Yep,
But they're grandfathered in.
But they're grandfathered in, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
That they're at that point, pre-existing non-conforming use. Yeah, I mean, you have throughout your regs, as Michael just indicated,
Yeah.
things that are pre-existing non-conforming.
Okay, I'm just wanted to bring that up.
Does that have any implications then for anything they might want to do
Yes.
on that property in the
If
meantime?
they would be unable to further expand their operations while they're pre-existing non-conforming. By making them pre-existing non-conforming, they're basically capped at whatever they have now. So they may have thoughts about this, they may not. I mean, obviously, they just finished a major expansion. I'm not sure that they have any great urgency to expand
Yeah.
further.
Oh, I'm just trying to understand implications. And so it's, but it would just be that one.
It will.
on Falls Road.
Any gas station you have in the C30 zone, I don't know if you have any others, I think you do along,
Where's the one
Down
on
in
Shore
South
Road?
well,
That's not C30.
That's at C30?
That's not
yeah.
C30, right?
Well, let's see, that side of the street, that side of the street, I don't think is C30. That, oh, it is? Well, okay.
Yeah, they have no intention of putting the gas station back there.
Okay. Also, the other place is.
No, I mean the one that's already there, Michael.
Yeah, she's saying that they wouldn't be able to expand their operations. And again, you have a gas station on Boston Post Road,
Yeah,
also, I think, in the C30 there.
yeah.
So that also would not be able to expand during the pendency of any time that they were deleted from the regs. So you may be hearing from them that they're unhappy with the possibility of it being removed from the regulations.
Right.
So, okay? And again, it's up to you how you want to handle that, but I mean, I'm
I'm
hearing
ready to
pretty.
handle it.
Huh?
I'm ready to handle it.
Okay, I'm just, but again, just keep in mind that this becomes a pre-existing non-conforming use once you take it
Yeah,
out of the
there's
regulation.
cascading effects, and I just want to make sure we understand what they are.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
not,
why I brought it up.
yeah.
So, yes.
Sorry to break wine
No,
train
good.
finally went
Yeah,
there.
no, sometimes there's unintended consequences.
Totally agree. I mean, that's an absolute concern, especially when our commission back in 2007 rezoned a bunch of commercial properties. For instance, Kathy Clark Vet Hospital, we removed the commercial zoning from her entire property. Now she's a non-conforming vet hospital who can't do anything else with her commercial property. So there's definitely unintended consequences to changing the regulations. I think in this case, all the gas stations that are in place are pretty much built out to their max capacity, at least my observation. I'm sure some things could change. But like the Citgo gas station on Shore Road, for instance, that's already been expanded to include what it is now. It's a smaller building before, they expanded it to a bigger building and redid the gas station.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Anyway, again, theoretically, this is only a temporary measure. What temporary means is sort of flexible, but theoretically, if you choose to add it back in, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So, yes, I understand that this does foreclose opportunities for some period of time. If someone is desperate to expand a gas station and wants to come back in here and propose to add it back into the regulations, they are always free to do so. Like I like to say about these regulations is, they're set in stone until they're not, okay? So these regulations are what they are, but then you're always free to change them like you did for the mortuary, right? You changed them for the mortuary because he came in and said, I need you to change them. So they are flexible enough that if someone does have an urgent need, you are able to address it.
All right, thank you, sorry.
No, I appreciate it.
Question, according to our minutes on the 14th,
Which I was not in the country for, so I can't comment on, but
well, it says here that Ledgelight Health District and Fire Marshal reviews will be sent to the land use coordinator. This was part of the motion. So I'm asking, did we get those?
I have, okay, which application is this on, just to be,
I'm sorry, this is for
It's on page 5.
McCurdy. Yeah, 40 McCurdy.
okay, I have not seen those reviews come back. I did meet with their engineer, and they are going to be working with Jacobson on the concerns you had regarding the other issues there. Because you raised issues regarding the cemetery and the sites adjacent to the cemetery and what needed to be found there. You also raised issues regarding, I guess, the septic and the stuff on the back regarding that. So I have not seen anything further from Ledgelight or Fire Marshal on those. I will go back and double check where we are with that.
Okay, do we consider those conditions, correct? It just said, in the minutes, it said their reviews will be sent to the land use coordinator.
Yeah, but that's a condition of approval.
That's fine.
I haven't seen them, so I will follow up and see where we are with that. But again, I did meet with Mike Ott regarding the sort of engineering issues that you guys raised. And I basically told him, go talk directly with Jacobson. Don't send it to me to send to them and then back and forth. So that was last week, almost about a week ago now. I'm expecting to hear back with whatever issues that get sorted out between him and Jacobson's office on that. Okay?
Thank you for that. That answers my question. Just for what I'd like to have added to the minutes regarding that application, was somewhere in there that I voiced concern over the apparent closeness of the parking area to the snack shack and suggested maybe some bumpers or whatever you call it, parking bumpers. And it didn't really, we had some change of opinions, different opinions on that issue, but it didn't make it into the minutes. And I think it's a liability issue, and I'd really like that added into the minutes.
Okay, well, that's up to the commission members. If you would like to propose to amend the minutes to include that, that's going to be.
That's why I mentioned that.
Okay, so, I wasn't here for the discussion. I don't remember it firsthand.
I remember her talking about that.
Okay,
Yeah, I do.
so if you want to propose to adopt the minutes with your additional comments there.
You have some little sentence you can give?
Yes. In fact, I can type it for you, but my script here is Ms. Nozel, voiced concern over the apparent closeness of parking to the expanded snack shack and suggested parking bumpers
Okay,
be considered. How's that?
sounds good to me.
She did say that.
That's what I remember.
So you're asking that the minutes be adopted with those additional words
Yes,
incorporated?
she is. She's making that motion, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second.
Okay, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
that brings us, so that was the 14th. Do you want to separately adopt the April 9th minutes? Are there any changes to the April 9th minutes? And-
Motion to approve April 9th special meeting minutes.
Okay.
Second,
And those are pretty exhaustive there.
I was exhausted.
Okay, so all in favor of the April 9th minutes?
Aye.
Okay, I guess that brings us to adjournment, and that is at 8:05. So, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.